So, welcome to today's video. We are taking a look at this very big white plastic box from White Nights. It is a set with 36 full pans. Of course, the full pans from White Nights are smaller than the normal size. Normal are 3 milliliters and White Nights does only 2.5 milliliters. So that is always important to know, because you won't be able to fit other brands' full pans into this box, except for probably brands that also use 2.5 milliliters, like Rosa Gallery, for example. But you won't be able to fit in brands like, for example, Schminke, which offers the full-size full pans. That is very important to know. As you could see, you can take off the lower lid, which is for mixing, which makes the set smaller and more accessible, or more practical on a small table like mine. I only put it on to show you that it comes with a lower lid. I have mine constantly off because I never mix on plastic anyway. It is better for me to put it off. And you could also take off the lid if you have a very, very small table and you don't use it. You can take it off, put it on your only the part with the pans on your desk, and that's it. What also is very important to know, that if you are unwrapping your pans and putting it into these rows, they will move. They are not fixed in like mine is. If you are turning it upside down, they will all fall out. What I did was I took a glue tape and put a stripe of glue in the rows, and then pressed my pans in to the set, so they don't move, and also they are fixed, so when I turn it upside down, that it don't fall out. I wouldn't do it like that nowadays. I would use sticky tack, these kneadable sticky tacks, and put a little bit under each pan and put it in, because this is much more easier to take out. You can take out the things with the glue tape, but of course that is a lot harder to do, and you will have the glue tape stuck inside it is harder to get off, and you will have to scratch off some when the glue tape, if you are taking it off and on more often, because it will get dirty, it will get less sticky, and that you don't have with the sticky tack. It's much more practical, in my opinion. Okay, so now to the colors. You could see when I showed you from the first color that with only a little movement of your brush over the pans, you get a lot of color on your brush. That is because White Nights use honey, and honey makes watercolor very easily to revet. And that way, in my opinion, you don't have to spray any of the or pre-wet any of those normally, except for a few pigments that are harder to re-wet in general. Normally you don't need it. So the first color is Zinc White PW's 4, 3 of 3 stars. 3 stars here by White Nights is the best light fastness. Then the first yellow is Cadmium Lemon Yellow PY 35, 3 of 3 stars. Cadmiums are very expensive pigments, so that is always nice to have in sets, that you get some more expensive pigments. They are also super in light fastness, but it is important to know that they are slightly toxic. So if you aren't into toxic pigments, then here in the set we do have some toxics. So that is just important to know. As with all toxic pigments, if they are very or even light toxic, of course handle with care. Take measurements that you don't spritz yourself all over or get it constantly on your skin. That should be avoided. Don't eat and drink while working with it, and wash your hands thoroughly afterwards. Then if you are handling them careful, it is not a problem, but yeah, that always keep in mind. The second yellow is also a cadmium yellow called cadmium yellow medium. It's also the genuine cadmium yellow pigment, PY35, 3 of 3 stars. Then we have an ochre color. Yellow ochre, sadly a mixture of PY43, natural yellow iron oxide, and a PY154, which is a very light fast pigment. I have it extra looked up when I did the German voiceover. So yes, it's a very light fast pigment, and the PY43 as well. That is why it is very confusing that White Nights only gave it 2 of 3 stars, because both pigments have 3 of 3 stars. So that's a little bit confusing. I prefer my ochres as single pigments, but some brands buy multiple different versions of ochre. Like for example, Daniel Smith have like, I don't know, 20 different ochres, because depending on where you get your earth pigments from, it varies. An ochre from Africa will look different than one from Europe or America, and one from, for example, New York State or California will look different, and one from Northern California will look different than one from Southern California. And you could limit it down that sometimes it even from town to town can look different. So depending on that, the ochre colors, of course, are very different. But some brands only buy one ochre pigment. And to get it more yellow for an yellow ochre, they just add some yellow in it. I think that is probably the case here. What they did, that they just added the yellow into the mix. Okay, so the first orange pigment here, called Golden, sadly is a not light fast color, because it contains 2 non-light fast pigments. It's a mixture of PO13, which isn't light fast, and PY3, which is also not light fast. In the end, I will show you, of course, as always, the dried swatches, and there I also have all the information written down. I always mark the ones non-light fast, even if the brands do rate them differently. I would have to look up which is the rating from the brand for the non-light fast colors, but I always get the information which is the more correct version, and these pigments just aren't light fast. So the second orange color here is Golden Deep. This is a PO62, which is a very light fast pigment, 3 of 3 stars. It's one from the benzimidazolone family. Then we have Yellow, which is a PY154. Like I said, very light fast pigment. That's the pigment they mixed into the yellow ochre. We have it here as a single pigment color as well. Then the first of the triangles, the orange one, is Titan Red, which is a very beautiful one. I do like it. It looks like a more transparent orange, darker version as well, and it's also a benzimidazolone pigment, and a very light fast one as this as well. It's PO36. The last color in this row, sadly, is also a non-light fast color. It's Ruby. It is a PR170, a very light fast color. This was also the pigment they've used in the past for carmine, which they've then changed to PV19. So the new carmines are PV19. If you have seen my review video of the 12 pan set in the white box, this is a very, very old box, and there I have the old pigment in the carmine. So that is just important to know. I did look up if they've changed the pigment maybe here in that color as well, like a year ago, but it was still a PR 170. So I think probably it is still to this day, they haven't changed it like they did the other one. So second row, first color is Cadmium Red Light, genuine cadmium pigment, again, slightly toxic, and also a very expensive pigment. It's PR 108, very, very light fast, and it does granulate a little bit. This is the same pigment that is used in the Volcano Red from Schminke in the super granulating watercolors. So it's a very awesome pigment. You can do a lot of different things with it. Like I said, it is slightly granulating depending on the brand. Some brands offer cadmium reds that are granulating much more than others. That differs from brand to brand, and cadmium reds are very versatile. We have this very beautiful light reds, which is a basic for me because in a watered down version I use it as my first shadow layer on skin. But it can also make this darker reds and dark purplish reds, often called cadmium red purple or cadmium purple or something like that. So yeah, very versatile pigment. Then we have the English red, which also is a very stable. I personally prefer it to have it in the lower row, but back in the day when I've bought the set, I put the pans exactly like the companies did it. I never changed them. So yeah, that's why it is up here. It's a PR 101 in a very opaque version, which is normal for English red. So it's a synthetic red iron oxide, very light fast pigment. Then we come to our primary magentas, and we have two versions here. We have the quinacridone rose, which is confusing because normally the pigment is called quinacridone pink. It's a PR 122. 3 of 3 stars, which is a more cooler primary magenta. And then we have the carmine, which in this version already is made of PV19, which is normally, the pigment is called quinacridone rose. So it is a bit confusing because they call their quinacridone pink quinacridone rose. But yeah, I have written it down as PR19 for the reason that this was the first generation where they changed it from the PR 170 to PV19, and they had a printing error on those. They printed on PR19, but it is a PV19, just so that you know, if you also have an older version which has a PR19 printed on, it is a PV19. It is just a printing error. Then the last red color is the Madder Lake Light. It's a PR 187, which is a very light fast pigment, so 3 of 3 stars. And it is a nice dark red color. And yeah, the carmine is also one you can use as a primary magenta. It is just a little bit warmer than the quin rose here. Then we have our first purple color, which is quinacridone lilac. It's also a PV19, 3 of 3 stars in a nice, it's a nice warm violet. Then we have the violet I swatched just now, which is a not light fast color because it is PV3. That's a non-light fast pigment. if you have seen the review video for the Kusakabe single pigment sets and the staining set, there is also a PV3 inside. And I have added a photo of a child in the end, which was treated with a medicine that is called Gentiana violet, which contains this pigment, which also is often called, I think, methyl violet or crystal violet, something like that. And in Germany we don't use it anymore, but when I was in a nursing school in my first years as a pediatric nurse, we still used this for treating different skin problems, and it is still used in other countries. I've seen like a video which is only like 2 years or so old on YouTube from the USA, so probably in the US it is still used. The problem is it really colors the skin for weeks to months after the treatment is ended. Still, it is super constantly colored for a long time, and that is one of the reasons why we don't use it anymore here because it doesn't look very nice. And when it gets lighter, it often looks like the person got a beating. And of course, if you have kids and they look like the parents beat them, it is not really good, which can cause problems. So yeah, that's one of the reasons it isn't used anymore here. But yeah, if you want to see how it looks, either Google it or watch the other video. Yeah, so just a side fact to the pigment. Ultramarine is the first triangle, the lower one, ultramarine, PB29, 3 of 3 stars. That's an absolute must-have for me personally in every set, because it's my favorite color of all colors and also my most used color. So yeah, can't live without an ultramarine blue. And the next color here is called Bright Blue, which is the last color on this row. It is basically just a phthalo blue green shade, PB15 column 3, 3 of 3 stars. But those two colors are absolute basic must-have in my opinion, especially in sets that are bigger, because yeah, it basically is your warm and cool primary blue in most sets you buy when you buy starter sets. I'm not talking about specialized sets like sets especially just for floral or botanical art or something like that, or seascape art or what else. But for these standard sets, those two are probably the two blue colors that you will find the most. Also, a very expensive pigment is the first color in the third row. It is cobalt blue, PB28, genuine cobalt blue, very beautiful blue color, very light, fast, beautifully granulating, and of course cobalts are also toxic pigments, so that is also, like cadmiums, important to know. Then we have a second ultramarine, ultramarine deep, PB29, 3 of 3 stars. So for me personally, of course, as I said, because I use so much ultramarine blue, it is the first color that is empty in a set. I don't personally have a big problem with it because I know I will definitely use it. But if you are someone who don't use ultramarine a lot, 2 ultramarines in a set is of course more like And I have other brands, like for example Shinhan PWC, where I have an ultramarine deep and an ultramarine light, and they are very different in color, because the light is very light version and the deep is looks like the deep version we have here. Here the difference honestly isn't that big. It is very identical, and therefore it for most people probably is not optimal that you have 2 very identical looking ultramarine blues. I think if they would look as differently as mine from Shinhan looks, then it would be better. We have here two very identical versions. I think we could have rather put some other blue color in here, like an indanthrene blue, which would have been a better choice. Then we have a turquoise blue. Turquoises, when we have mixed turquoises like that, we either have a phthalo green mixed with a phthalo blue, or a phthalo green mixed with a phthalo with an ultramarine blue. Phthalo green with phthalo green with ultramarine, Jesus, or a single pigment phthalo blue, turquoise, because there is a pigment that a single pigment B16. Which is a phthalo pigment that makes turquoises like that as well. But here we have the standard version PG7, phthalo green blue shade mixed with a phthalo blue green shade. Jesus. PB15 column 3. So we have the phthalo green, phthalo blue version here. Some brands do also offer phthalo green ultramarine blue, which we find in the White Knight super granulating colors as well. So it's a beautiful turquoise. It is very easily mixed yourself. I think to have one pre-mixed turquoise in a set this big of a size is fine. It's nice to have. It would have been a nice to have, but not must have color. But like I said, it is only one turquoise we have in this whole set, so I think that's fine. Yeah, then we have an indigo. That is this color I swatched just now, which is sadly non-light fast, and that is always a bummer in my opinion, because the whole reason why the genuine indigo isn't used in watercolors anymore is it is non-light fast. And why replace a non-light fast pigment with a mixture that is non-light fast as well? Just doesn't make any sense. So in mixtures like indigos, sepias, and so on, it is always wise to look at the pigments, because a lot of brands using light fast versions, but also are a lot of companies using non-light fast pigments. Often in indigos you find, for example, PB66, which is just the synthetic version of the genuine indigo pigment, which is also non-light fast because the chemical structure is the same, as far as I know. So yeah, always take a look at the pigments before using mixtures like that. Here the problem is the PB23, which is dioxazine violet. It is a pigment that is not light fast. Depending on the brand, it is from mediocre to very bad, so we can't be sure. It is listed first, so I guess it contains a lot of it. I don't know if the PBK7, which is also in here, and the PB15, when the PB23 vanishes over time, partially, how much indigo-like the rest will look. I never done or looked it up if someone have done a test on it. But yeah, it is just something to know. It is definitely a color that will fade, and you can very, very easily mix indigo-like color if you use a PB15 column 3 and mix a black into it, light fast black. Makes very beautiful indigo-like colors. So yeah, if you are doing something where light fastness is important, don't use this indigo. Then we have the last blue, which is cerulean blue. Genuine cerulean blue PB35. It is also a cobalt pigment, so it is also slightly toxic. It granulates, and normally I do prefer PB35 cerulean blues over PB36. That's just a personal preference. Some brands offer only one version or the other. Some brands offer both. I think like a year or so ago that they, or 2 years ago, that White Knights included a PB36. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, sadly, that is the one color I absolutely hate from White Nights, because the cerulean blue is, the consistency is strange, and it often makes this streaky, depending on the paper. Here it is better, but on some paper it is worse. Sometimes it looks very streaky, and especially on smoother paper like hot pressed, it rewets not as easily as the others. That is the one pigment I normally don't have a problem, but in the White Night grains I do pre-wet it before I use it. And yeah, it has this little strange feeling sometimes. So I personally don't like the version. I absolutely love PB35, but I don't like the White Nights version. But that is just a personal preference, but I do know that I'm not the only one having problems with this PB35 version. If you want to know which versions are better also, I do have a video in the Pigment and Color Family playlist dedicated to cerulean blue, also to ultramarine blue, cobalt blue. I've done the whole families of cobalt pigments, ultramarine pigments, manganese pigments so far. I will do more, but yeah, if you want to see various brands compared and get more information about the pigments and the color history, then I can recommend watching those videos. So then the first of the greens, sadly, is also non-light fast. We have a very big non-light fastness going on here with the greens in this set. It is yellow-green. It is a mixture of PG7, phthalo green blue shade, and PY3. PY3 here, the color, the pigment that isn't light fast. Then we have emerald green, which is basically just our phthalo green blue shade, PG7, 3 of 3 stars. Now I know that a lot of people hate this color because it looks so artificial, but it is, in my opinion, totally underrated. The pigment, I do say this very often, I know, but it is super, super easy to mix really beautiful and natural looking transparent greens with this color as a basic mixing starter. For example, I love to mix it with a burnt sienna, a burnt umber, or oranges like PO48, for example. Makes absolutely wonderful natural looking greens and olive green colors, so I can really, really recommend it. And for me personally, it is an absolute must-have in a set that big. Then we have a green that I also love very, very much, but sadly is not very light fast. The lower triangular here, it is only called green. As far as I know, PG8, that's the pigment in here, is the genuine Hooker's green pigment. Because of the non-light fastness, most brands nowadays offer mixtures, but they often look very different. We have a very dark, natural looking, transparent green. It is very, very beautiful. Like I said, it is sadly very non-light fast, but I do love it, and not very much brands nowadays offer it. I do definitely know that Rosa Gallery and Shinhan PwC has PG8 in their range. I'm not sure about, I think 1 or 2 other brands also offer it, but I'm not quite sure which it was. So yeah, not a pigment you will find in many brands. Even when it's not light fast, I personally do like it a lot. Then we have a next green, which is also non-light fast. Like I said, we have from 5 greens in the set are 3 non-light fast, which is called olive green. And here the problem is the PY1. PY1 is a very non-light fast yellow pigment. Then we have PBK7, carbon black, and PG17, which is chromium oxide green, which is a very nice granulating green. So I guess if you would use this on a bigger scale, you would have the granulation better visible in this color. And it is the last green pigment as well, the first color on the last row is the chromium oxide green, PG17. Like I said, granulating green pigment, and I hated it for a very long time, and nowadays I start to like it a lot. I like the color itself in a diluted version. I not so much like it in the mess tone, because it looks often a little bit like a muddy green. But it is a nice color you can use in super granulating mixtures, and it is a very cheap pigment, which makes it a very affordable granulating green for people with a limited budget, because like 99% of the other granulating greens are cobalt pigments, and they are very expensive. So this is the one I would recommend if you are on a budget. If you want to have a super granulating palette, for example, go for a chromium oxide green. So then earth pigments. The first one is raw sienna, PY43. So we have a ochre color in here in the set, which is a single pigment, which is for me personally very important in a set that big, that we have a single pigment version in here. Then we have a very beautiful burnt sienna, PBR7, single pigment burnt sienna, which is nice. 3 of 3 stars, of course, for all of those 3 pigments, PG17, PY43, and PBR7. So the first 3 colors here are very, very good in light fastness. Then we have the color called amber here. A lot of brands call it raw amber. This one here is a mixture. It's not a single pigment version. A lot of brands do offer single pigment versions for a raw amber. So if you are preferring single pigment versions, there are definitely brands offering those. We have here a mixture of PBK7, PY43, and PBR7. Now this is a color I have mentioned so often that I absolutely hate it. And for many years I never used those. I did finally find usage for it as a mixing color like just a year ago. That's how long I avoided those colors. Some brands do look very different. The raw ambers, for example, the Winsor & Newton one looks like a lot more like a raw sienna. But most go more with this color shade, like this greenish, grayish, darkish brown. Yeah, I do know, like for example in landscape art, a lot of people use it as a mixing color. So I think it is in a set this big definitely a good thing to have it in it. Then we have burnt umber, and here a lot of brands also do multi-pigment mixes, like for example Daniel Smith and Winsor Newton Professional. Their burnt umbers are 3 pigment mixes, and here we do have a single pigment version, which I personally prefer, and the burnt umber looks very nice. It's a PBR7, of course, like the umber. Here we also do have a 3 of 3 stars. Then we have a color here called Mars Brown. This is a PBR6. Now, PBR6 is basically the synthetic version of a PBR7. PBR7 is the natural version of a brown iron oxide. I will do the rest of the colors while I show you the dried swatches in a close-up. Not a lot of brands offer PBR6 in general. It is rarely used in comparison to PBR7, is much more popular. There are some brands offering PBR6, like for example brown iron oxide or iron brown oxide, something like that, from Schminke Horadam is a PBR6, and that's my favorite version of a PBR6 because it has a color separation effect even with being a single pigment, because it has some black and brown parts that separates very beautifully from each other, which makes it a very interesting color. Here the PBR6 just looks identical to the burnt umber PBR7 version. So it is a color I use a lot. I will be able to use it, but in my personal opinion there would have been more better choices to put in here as a second color that looks exactly like a burnt umber. A caput mortem, for example, an Indian red or so, that would have been a nice addition to the earth range here. Or other colors. There are definitely, even if you are using a PBR7, another PBR7 version, there are definitely, like I said, depending on which part of the world your earth pigment comes from, they can look so differently. So there would have been so many good choices to add. I think it is a little bit disappointing to have two colors that look so identical to each other. So that's just a wasted space, in my opinion. Like with the ultramarine blue here, we could have done better choices. But okay, at least it is a color that probably most people use more often. It is a very often used color, so at least we don't have a double of colors that we barely use. Then the last brown is a sepia, and it's a nice sepia version. It's a light fast sepia version, which, like I said, not is always the case with mixtures like that. So we have PBK7, PR102 and PR187, which we also have in the Meadow Lake light here, all very light fast. Nice version. Then we have neutral black, PBK7, PB15 column 1, so phthalo blue, and again PR187. So all of the pigments are very light fast, very beautiful neutral looking black. And the last color is Payne's Gray, which looks not so much like a Payne's Gray here. I think also it is a non-light fast mixture. We have PB23 again, which is the dioxazine violet, which is not very light fast. We have PB15 phthalo blue and PBK7 again. Now, in my personal opinion, if I do two black colors in a set, then I would have preferred if one of those blacks would be a single pigment black. If it's a PBK11 or a PBK6 or a PBK7, for example, I think to add two mixtures that look here on the paper so identical, again, not the perfect choice. And we have already a 3-pigment mixture in black. Why not add a single pigment version? And to be honest, a lot of these single pigment blacks are much cheaper, as for example the phthalo blue that is used in both mixtures here, because phthalo pigments are more expensive than, for example, PBK11. So yeah, that's also something where I say it would have probably been cheaper to have a single pigment black in here. That's my personal opinion, of course, but yeah. So we do have a set with 36 colors. From this 36 colors, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 non-light fast colors, if I haven't counted wrongly. So that is quite much, I think, for the size, which is a negative point in my opinion. We are still here in an artist grade range, and we do have some pigments in here like PY1, which normally other brands doing artist grade paints not use nowadays anymore. Or the PR170 is also one which is not so much used. PB23 we see a lot, but we don't see a lot of PV3 or PO13, for example, in artist grade. PY3 in comparison nearly all brands offer. So that is not something which I see rarely in artist grade, but we have some pigments that normally artist grade ranges not use a lot, or not at all. So that's a big negative point. A big plus point is that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors in here that use very expensive pigments. Because when you're taking, for example, a 24 set, then you can be happy if you have 1 or even 2 expensive pigments in it. So I think for a 36 pan set, 5 very expensive pigments is a very good ratio. So that's definitely a big plus, because like I said, cadmiums and cobalts are very expensive. Overall, I think the color selection is good. I do have some points that I think is, like the double ultramarine, the double nearly identical blacks, the double burnt umber-like color. Also, with the yellows, I would have preferred if they have added at least one transparent yellow, like a quinacridone gold color or nickel azo yellow. I do know that White Nights offer those, not under the name nickel azo yellow and quinacridone gold, but that you have them. And for example, in the small set with the 12 pans, also with the white plastic box, I do have already mentioned previous in the video that I do have a review video about that set, and there we do have a transparent yellow in it, and I can't understand why they haven't added it here, because that is definitely something a lot of people love and use, and in a set this big, when they already do add it in the small set from the same line, why not add it in the bigger one? That's what I don't understand. So that is definitely something I have changed, because I knew that the 12 pan set has a color selection that I will not use on its own. I will have to use additional sets. So I have taken out the transparent yellow and put it in here in exchange for the white. And I have put out one of the blacks here and have exchanged. Oh, I don't know. What have I done? What have I added? Some other color. Was it a green or? I'm not 100% sure. I think it was a green. But yeah, those are the two colors that I have changed because that was something I did miss here. And like I said, I don't need 2 identical blacks. I did take out the Payne's Gray, the non-light fast version. I did leave the neutral black in here. And that were changes I did make, because this is a set size where I say it is big enough that you can easily use it on its own. I do have all the basics that I need. We have primary yellows, we have primary reds, we have primary blues, we have warm and cool versions. So we have like all the basics. We have a nice basic range of earth colors. We do have a neutral, we do have darker reds, we have even have secondary colors like orange, turquoises, violets, greens, for examples. So we do have a nice range in general, even when I would have preferred some things differently. So overall, I think it is a good set, especially the price per value is quite nice, because White Nights is a very affordable brand, and you easily can buy like single colors in pens or tubes additional to it, to change maybe 1 or 2 colors that you are not completely comfortable with, with, and don't have a big additional cost, because they are in most countries very, very affordable as well. So yeah, I think definitely I can recommend a set, even with the negative points, because overall I think it is a good set. So I would absolutely love to hear if you personally have the set. How do you like it? Do you have some colors changed that you were not completely satisfied with? Or do you have other sets from White Nights? Which are those? Do you like the brand? How accessible or affordable is it in your place? Yeah, I would love to hear from you. And as always, a thumbs up or a follow is very much appreciated. And thank you so much for watching the video. I really, really hope it was interesting and helpful. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and to see you soon in one of my other videos. Bye bye, and take good care of yourself. Have a nice day.